Welcome to The Passion Pod with your host, Chris Johnson. Thanks for joining us. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the feature presentation.
Season 8, Episode 4.
Welcome back, friends. Today we traveled to Los Angeles to finally learn a few things and catch up with the rest of the world. Yes, I've heard of cryptocurrency and NFTs. I don't live completely under a rock, but it's true, I don't really understand how either of them work all that much. Our guest today hosts his own podcast called The Real MVP Show. He's involved in the NFT space. He's a DJ, designer. He does a lot of things, really, so we're going to find out. Welcome to the show, Enrico Moses. Dude, I'm stoked that we were able to link up. So shout out to alumni J-Rap. He was a guest on the show a little while ago, and he connected us for this episode. So
big shout to J-Rap.
I really love how it works out here, where like the first time I came out here, I'm like a big planner, normally. And so the first time I ever came out to California, it was like I need to have all these interviews lined up for exactly these times, and I wanted them lined up like weeks in advance. And then I quickly found out it doesn't work that way.
No.
And you have to like realize people don't know what they're doing a week in advance in LA half the time, especially if it's something like this. And I just have to trust that like my friends out here can find me interviews. Yes. And it works out, but for me, I'm just like, oh my God, I hope it happens. But then again, last night I got a text from one of my other friends here, and he's like, hey, you got time for another interview this weekend? I'm like, yes, actually I do. Right. So anyway, I'm stoked it worked out because we didn't even get, we got set up with a group chat on Saturday.
Yep.
And it's Thursday? So
it is different. Let's just say that.
Very different than the Midwest, which you're originally from, right?
Man.
So, first off, who are you and what are you passionate about in your own words?
And I am passionate about being creative. I'm passionate about building communities and helping those communities thrive. That's really like what I do in a nutshell and in many different ways. I'm really all about elevating culture and helping people to understand their greatness, and through that, me finding out what my greatness is and trying to be that, and then sharing that with the world and learning from other people who are great. So I'm really, I love being around people who are building great things and are making the world a better place. So I'm really all about that.
That's what I love, man, is like hearing you say it in that kind of way, versus people like to put labels on themselves specifically, like I own a skateboard shop. So like, yeah, when people ask what I do, I'm like, oh, I own a skateboard shop, but I also do artwork, but I also do, this show. And what it comes down to, I was really thinking about it one time, and I'm like, so what is it about the show? Like, why am I good at this? Why is this what I want to do? And really at the core of me opening my skateboard shop, like the reason I did that is because when I was in high school, I used to hang out at the little local shop that we had in town at the time, right? And that was like my second home in a way. And the older guys there were like, I don't know if mentor is really the right word, but they were like the cool older brother. Like I loved hanging out there. And me being a parent, I got 2 kids. You said you also have 2 kids. When I opened my shop, it was my older daughter was a year old. And part of it was like, I kind of want to be this like older brother parent person. Like I wanted to mentor kids. And that's what I do through the show, and through my shop. And I help kids, and it's been 7.5 years now. So I've seen them go from middle school up into college and stuff. And I know that I've played some kind of role. Mm-hmm. And then transitioning into the show, really what it is I want to be able to help mentor and cultivate people's dreams. Like in a way, in the same kind of way, right? It's not about listening to myself talk. It's about like interviewing other people to inspire others to show them like, hey, and it came from me being like, well, I opened my skateboard shop, which was my dream when I was 14,
right? And
not like an egotistical, like look at what I'm doing, but it really is like I see my other friends and I see things that they want to do and they're like too afraid to make that jump,
Yep.
And like the show is my way of like, I can help people do this. Mm-hmm. And I also think like it's really cool that just at the end of that, you mentioned people who want to make the world a better place. And this is a tangent, but why do we not talk about that in schools?
Making the world a better place.
Just in general, about caring about what you do. You know what I mean? Because we really do just focus mostly on like stability and money and keeping up with the Joneses mentality. We don't actually say, okay, well, do you feel good about spending your time this way?
I think a lot about, because my children are in school, right? I think about my experience in school, and I think about just what school is right now, how it got started, right? Like there's kind of the story of Henry Ford building the school system, and like the way that the bells ring is kind of like preparing children for like the factory, right? And I think as I get older, I think the purpose of school is to like deliver a baseline education, right? And right now it's challenging because we're all so different. Like I'm pretty creative, so I struggled in certain classes and I excelled in others, right? And then some kids, they do well all throughout school, right? And so I think the situation of like what is school supposed to be compared to what it is such like it's such a powerful conversation, because I think so much of who we are in making the world a better place begins from our education, right? So it's like, is it the school's job to teach the kids how to make the world a better place? I think it should be, but like, is it right now? And then why isn't it, right, is like the question you're asking.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's tough. The world's like all at war with each other about what should be taught and what shouldn't be taught and whatever. But realistically, the internet is there and kids have access to this internet and they're going to choose what they're going to look at, right? So that's the scary part about us being parents at this point in time, is like knowing what our kids are exposed to. When we were growing up, you said you're 38? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm 31. So when we were growing up, we couldn't just go on the internet and see whatever we wanted. Not when we were like young.
Yep.
You know, when we got older, at some point, yeah, it was a little bit more accessible. But I know when I was young, if I even wanted to watch a rated R movie, I had to make sure I tried to like rewind that VHS to the right space. You know what I mean? It was like you couldn't get away with that, and you couldn't.
As easy.
Yeah, it just wasn't. The first problems with chat rooms and stuff were starting to emerge. And I came from like a middle class family. My mom was a teacher and my dad worked for the DNR. They were pretty like on point, like watching what I was doing. Mm-hmm. So that stuff wasn't there. They could kind of control all the outside sources that were happening. Now that's not really possible. So we have to figure out, what do we want to teach in public schools? Because whatever they're not learning in public schools, they're learning on the internet.
Yes.
So we have to try to figure that out. Anyways, that was a tangent, but I think we're on the same page with it. So if people want to get familiar with you, like I said, you have a show. What in general are the things that you do, and how can people kind of go see those, whether it's like following you on social media or whatever? How can they see that stuff?
Yeah, so focused on blockchain technology and crypto and helping to manage NFT artists. So I'm working with artists who have intellectual property, and through that intellectual property, I'm helping them put that onto the blockchain through NFTs. So that's one of the main things that I'm doing right now, and people can go find out that information on the Real MVP show. You can kind of see some of the people that I'm interviewing, and also check out a project that I'm launching called Flash Mints, which is on flashmints.com. And that project, I'm working with some really legendary photographers in the NFT space to take their photography and to launch it in a way that is exciting for collectors, right? So I'm also very heavily involved in collecting in the NFT space, not just as like a creator, but also as like a buyer, you know, as a fan, as someone that's watching what's happening in the creative and entrepreneur space in crypto and NFTs. So that's one of the main things that I'm doing, is participating in the ecosystem and then sharing that knowledge while I'm participating, sharing that knowledge with my audience, and then bringing my clients along, you know, because I have several projects. And so I'm learning things as each project is launching, you know, what's the best way to market, you know, what does it mean to, you know, have a smart contract that I develop compared to like a generic smart contract, right? So those are the things that I'm really immersed in right now. But other than that, like I DJ as well. I'm very passionate about bringing people together, you know, through music, through ideas. So I've been hosting different types of events for the last 10 years all throughout LA. And that's come from agencies that I've run, agencies that I've been a part of. And it's very similar to what I'm doing with the Real MVP show, right? So you have all this information and you have people from, you know, all over the globe. And this is information you can't get in school, going back to what we were talking about, right? You can't even get this information in books right now. It's people are at the cutting edge of, you know, how is the technology moving out? And a lot of that for me comes from my interest in the tech space and in digital marketing. When I was 23, I started a store. That's why, like, when you're talking about your skate shop, it's really dope. In Minneapolis, I started a menswear store called Big Faces, and that was started off of a t-shirt line that I started, and really created a kiosk selling my t-shirts. And that started going well, to the point where I'm looking at my kiosk and I didn't have any more storage underneath it for my t-shirts. Right. So I'm like, okay, I need to get a store now. You know, I need to get an inline store. So going through that process of actually like moving into the retail space, and then learning, okay, now there's all these other things that I have to learn now that I'm in the retail space. So tying all that together, I'm really like into multiple projects, right? And helping creatives find their way into monetize. So that's kind of like, in a very large brushstroke, what I'm doing right now, and you know, some of the ways you can kind of see some of those things.
There's a few things I want to touch on with that. One, I love, and we can definitely go back more into the progression at some point, but I love that you actually put that foundation out there as to like, there's a reason why you're at where you're at, right? So many people think it's completely money driven. That's not the case with people who are successful 99% of the time. It's not because it's money driven. It's because they actually really care about that stuff, right? And when you've grown something from making t-shirts when you were young to opening your own store, doing the whole retail space, like helping people feel good, and realizing, okay, I kind of expanded to where I wanted to with that space, and then moving to somewhere else. And now all of a sudden you're doing music. It's like you laid the foundation of understanding like how all of that stuff works. And then the second part I was going to talk about, and I've thrown this out on the show too many times, but people should just go back and listen to it. I interviewed the brand manager for Santa Cruz, like the skateboard company. His name's Andrew Cannon, a while back, and I asked him about how social media being a challenge for like pro skateboarders, like how to navigate it. And he flipped it on me and he said, well, you know, if people stop looking at things as challenges and instead look at them as opportunities, here's the thing. If nothing changed, you would be so far behind, because there's all these experts out there that they already know what they're doing. You would not be able to catch up. But because new challenges, but if all these things opening up, nobody's an expert yet, which means you can be the expert.
Facts.
But you also have to learn, right? And then the third part of it that I wanted to get to was, I love that you're recognizing that, hey, there's this opportunity of this new space that's growing, that it is growing. That's like not arguable. You know, it is growing. No one really knows how it works yet. I'm willing to try to tackle it, but I want to tackle it as a team. How do I like spread my resources out with all my friends, instead of going like, well, I want to dominate this space, and say, okay, well, realistically, if you're an explorer, what's better, to have a team of like people who have different skill sets to try to navigate this thing and all succeed together, or try to go about it yourself and get this tiny little crumb of the pie, right? So that's kind of exciting to be able to look at it in that way.
I love that so much, especially in the NFT space, because the way I look at a successful NFT project is as a company, is as a startup, right? So I don't know if you're familiar with OpenSea. Are you familiar with OpenSea? So OpenSea.io is one of the largest NFT marketplace platforms in the world. So that's where, if you're interested in NFTs, that's kind of where all the action is. You can go on there and see the ranking, like what are the top selling NFTs, what are the top collections, what is the cheapest price you can buy in at in any of these collections. So if you look on that site, they kind of look like stock tickers, right? So it's like you'll have the logo for whatever the NFT project is. You'll have the name of the project, like Bored Ape Yacht Club, CryptoPunks, right? These are some of the more popular NFT projects. But when you look at these projects, they have a full team, to your point. They have creative directors, they have graphic designers, they have smart contract developers, they have metadata experts, they have a marketing team. Like, it's a whole team of people who are putting together these projects, and these projects are bringing in massive amounts of revenue. You know, it's like, it's such a different model with NFTs, because the creator, because of the smart contract, gets paid every time that NFT is sold, right? So CryptoPunks were actually free when they came out. 10,000 free CryptoPunks, you paid the gas fee to mine them. Now CryptoPunks are selling for millions of dollars a piece, right? But every time a CryptoPunk sells, the creator gets a percentage of that $1 million, right? So if you're looking at that every single day, these $1 million sales going in, and this, who knows when this is gonna stop, right? Like, we're still at the very beginning of this, but some of those companies are making 2, 3, 4, 10, 20, 50, $100 million of revenue a year in these royalties, right? And so now it's almost like a new way of starting a business, because you can have a group of founders and they're getting paid off of the royalty sales and off of the primary sales, if you do choose to have, an actual primary sale. So it's, it's such an interesting time, and I hope I'm not speaking, a whole nother language to people, but all these things you can kind of start doing your research on, which is the goal, right? Is to start educating people in a way to say, okay, what is OpenSea? When I go to the ranking list, what is Bored Ape Yacht Club? And, doing research and finding out why are these NFTs selling for $200,000, $300,000 when 6 months ago they were $1,000, right? This is a real thing. Because going back to the original crypto like Bitcoin, right? I always tell people, when was the best time to buy Bitcoin? The very beginning, right? So you think about crypto in this way where now it's like, oh, Bitcoin, 50,000, 60,000. We forget it was $100, right? It was $50 at some point. And I was just talking to my brother, I said, the interesting thing about that, because Bitcoin to this right now is the highest appreciating asset of all time, right? But what I told my brother, I said, right now there's something that's being put out there. It might be an NFT, it might be a cryptocurrency that has the potential to appreciate in that same way.
Yeah.
The difference is just the knowledge, right? And that's why I think cryptocurrency is so powerful, because before it was people who had capital were the ones who were able to benefit off of everything that's happening new, right? Something comes in, it's like, okay, we're going to put this $100 million investment. You see that in the cannabis industry, where a lot of large companies are pushing out the smaller people who are kind of building the cannabis industry, because now regulation, it costs so much money to get in. Yeah. So with cryptocurrency, it's kind of the other way around. If you have access to the information, then the people with the capital come in later. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, it's all a risk reward thing, really. That's what it comes down to, right? And it's in the same way with social media things. Here's a random example. Clubhouse, right? That popped. Everyone wanted to hop in because they saw the same opportunity as what Bitcoin was. They're like, okay, well, if we're at the frontier of this, we could blow up. And from my viewpoint, it's not going anywhere. It's going to be gone, right? So that's where it comes down to, is if nobody believes in it yet, that risk is high. Mm-hmm. That's why there's all that opportunity. Bitcoin, who knew that Bitcoin was going to be anything, or this random NFT or whatever it is. The thing is there isn't that popular belief that it is going to go anywhere. It doesn't have momentum yet. So if you can identify that you think this is going to have momentum and put some money into it, you can make a lot of money, but you're also putting a huge risk, right? Because there's nothing out there yet to believe that is going to be something. So you have to try to stay at the forefront and see it. And as you see something go, do your research, right? And then if you really believe in it, now hop on. But the beautiful thing with crypto and in these NFTs and all that stuff is you don't have to throw your entire life savings into it to make money, because it's such something. Well, exactly, because it's something that'll pop off so much. We're not talking about a 10x. We're talking about a 1,000x.
Yeah.
Right? So
and that's the thing about risk, right? So there's two sides to risk. There's the risk of doing something and losing your money, right? You put in $1,000, the risk of it goes to zero. That's a risk. You also have the risk of doing nothing and missing out on the opportunity. When you talk to any large investor like VC or angel, their biggest fear is actually missing out on a deal, right? Mm-hmm. It's passing up on Uber or Facebook or one of these major deals. So the risk as consumers who are now entering into this capital space, I think that's what cryptocurrency does. I laugh to myself, everyone is a stockbroker today. You think about all these little tickers and people I have Solana or whatever ETH, and they're trading these things, and people are talking about trading. Trading in the 80s, nobody was talking about that. That was a very specific group of people who are thinking like that. So now, the money markets are starting to enter into retail, into the general kind of ethos of how we think. So this now we have to think about, okay, what was the risk of me not investing some of my money when I had my store into Bitcoin? What did I lose, right? So it's that $1,000, okay, I lost that down to zero. It's like going to the casino. That's gambling. I put $1,000 on black, I lose it, I lost, right? The difference with crypto is that the upside is enormous, right? So I can lose that $1,000, but what happens with the opportunity of making money with that $1,000, right? And so in that, I want to spread the idea of delayed gratification, because I'm really about helping people build generational wealth. And in my understanding of building wealth, that primarily comes from the ability to delay gratification, right? And so that can be with school, right? School, you're not getting paid to go to school. So even that is a concept of delayed gratification, right? Mentorship, like I'm going to give someone my services and learn from them instead of saying, no, I'm not going to give you my skills. You need to pay me. I charge $30 an hour, right? That's the concept of delayed gratification, which could give you the ideas, which can then create wealth for you, right? Same thing with putting your money into investments. The people who lost the most amount of money in the last 10 years are people who invested in Bitcoin and sold too early. They lost the most amount of money based on the opportunity cost that they missed out on. And the reason why that happened is because their delayed gratification wasn't strong enough, right? You put in $10,000 into Bitcoin at $100, it goes up to $1,000, right? What I said, $1,000. Now that turns to $10,000, and you're like, oh man, I got $10,000. I'm out of here. This it's gonna keep going down. Like I'm out, right? But then they missed the opportunity from 1,000 to 50,000, right? And how much is that 10,000 worth? From that, what was that, another 50x from there?
People just aren't good with discipline, right? They look at like, okay, well, I already made all this. But really what you need to look at is try to forget whether you lost or made money up till this point and just look at it today. As in right now, do you think this is still going up? And then try to make your judgment call. But people aren't very disciplined, when it comes to that. I think it's... Okay, so NFTs, I have a business understanding, right, which is how the show works. And I think part of the reason that I'm able to get guests is because they see that same, like, we have a similar thing. They're like, oh, you're doing something you really care about and you found a way to make it work. I think guests genuinely, when they talk to me, are like, I wonder how you made a skateboard shop work in Wisconsin. Like, how'd you do that? That's interesting, right? Because like it's its own challenge, right? So I get to kind of have that connection with people. So I understand the business side kind of like NFTs are it's a property that's a space that's quickly growing, and obviously like there's status attached to wanting to own certain things, such as like on Instagram, getting a blue check means a lot to people when really tangibly it doesn't mean anything, but it does in its own way. We all know it does, but it doesn't. NFTs, I think, are in that same idea of like, this doesn't technically have value if you got rid of computers, but it really does. So can you explain really like what an NFT is and kind of get into like why people want this so that way people understand? Because I think a lot of people just don't get it at all.
Yeah, so NFT stands for non-fungible token, and we live in a digital world, right? So Instagram, Twitter, if you talk to somebody and they just randomly say, oh yeah, I have 5 million followers, you're gonna be like, oh like that might mean more to you than someone being like, yeah, I have an MBA or I'm a doctor, right? Like, or I'm a PhD, I'll say, Sure. So as our society, and so there's a reason for that, because these social platforms have power, right? Their distribution. And so we are now moving to more of a digital world where if I post an Instagram photo of me wearing an outfit, more people are gonna see me wearing that outfit through my Instagram than they will in real life, right? Like you'll see me today, maybe my family and some people at my office, right? Maybe like 20 people will actually physically see me, but how many people are gonna see my Instagram stories, right? So we're already, in some ways, we're living in this digital realm already. The way people see us, the way people experience us, right? Like probably more people hear you through your radio show podcast than they see you in real life, right?
Yeah.
So, but now we don't have any items in that digital world. We just kind of like, we're starting to step into that digital world, right? And it's like, we have a little sliver. So my Instagram account is my digital representation of myself, right? And I'm curating that, and we're all curating that, right?
Yeah.
Some people are better than others at curating that. That's why they're influencers, because they're really good at curating a page in a way that's attractive to people, right? And so the reason why NFTs are important is because we are already living in this digital world, and we're going to continue living more and more in the digital world. And what NFTs is it's a revolutionary technology that for the first time you can own a digital item, right? So a digital asset. So that's really what NFTs are. And the reason why you might want to own them is they're valuable. So people like things that are valuable. That's why I think we're even talking about Bitcoin today as a society, because it went from whatever $1 to 60,000, right? If it went from $10 to $1, nobody would talk about it, right? We wouldn't be even having the conversation. So the value of things are important, but then you have to ask yourself, well, why is it valuable, right? So that question is a very deep philosophical question. Like, why are things valuable? As a skateboard shop owner, it's like, why is this t-shirt this much? And then that t-shirt I can't sell for this much. Like, in people's mind, we put value on certain things, right? We know that for brands, it's like, why not buy a Saturn? Why buy a Mercedes?
Oh, yes, the idea of perceived value, right? So here's a quick example, not to interrupt you, but I think this is a good one for people to be able to picture, is I worked for K Jewelers at one point. They're owned by a hire company called Sterling Incorporated, which is owned by a hire company called Signet. But they also own Jared, the Gallery of Jewelry. This is just straight up true. So I don't know. I can't believe anyone would actually make an issue with this, But Jared and K's are owned by the same people. They literally have a lot of the identical items. Like literally there's a Jared in like the nearby where the K's I worked at was, right? And they needed a SKU. They needed a certain engagement ring that we had in my store. They didn't have it at their store. So gave it to their store. They have to put a new tag on it because now it has to say Jared. It's more expensive. Literally the physical item that I walked there. I personally walked to this other store for them to charge more for it. But here's the thing, is people will happily pay more for it because they believe it's worth more because it's at this different store that's a standalone location, that these employees are paid higher because they all had to be store managers of K's before they could work there, because they're displayed better. It's like you put in this perceived value, people will happily pay more for the exact same thing because of that. And yes, that is like, if you get into any kind of retail space at all, any space of selling anything, that's something to understand.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Perceived value. And then I'll also add that it's earned perceived value, right? Because the store that's charging more, they've done something with their marketing materials, right? They have built up their store. They might have even designed their store in a way that has an elevated appearance, so that by the time the customer gets to the register, they're like, all right, it's an extra $1,000, but like, I'm comfortable paying that because I'm getting the high end experience, right? And so I think that earned experience is something that it's about. Why do people value things, right? So it's like, I think about Gucci, a Gucci purse or a Louis Vuitton purse for a woman, right? It's like, okay, it's a couple $1,000s. There's purses at Target, and a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of people being in fashion, and some people, they just can't wrap their head around it. Or like a Hermes being like $20,000. Like, why would anybody pay $20,000 for this in comparison? You could get it for that. But you have to also understand Hermes, Gucci, Louis Vuitton. Since the beginning of those fashion companies, how many runway shows have they done? Who was at those runway shows? How many celebrities have worn Gucci? How many marketing campaigns have they done? What photographers did they pay? What models did they pay? When you buy that Louis Vuitton purse, you're buying all of the money and investment that brand has put in to create that perceived value. So it's really earned perceived value, right? And the marketplace, we see that and we respond to that. And so NFTs, bringing it back, it's very similar. It's like anybody can create an NFT. You can literally listen to the show, Google, how do I create an NFT? And within an hour, you can make an NFT. It's not difficult, but is that NFT going to be valuable? Are you Beeple? Are you going to be able to sell that NFT for $69 million, right? And that's where the earned perceived value starts coming in of well, why would they want to own this, right? Why does someone want to own a t-shirt, right? Many reasons, right? We do need to wear something to clothe ourselves, but more than that, people want to show you who am I? This is my identity. I have I'm wearing tie-dye, that represents something about me. So we're moving into that, right? Instagram, we don't own our Instagram account. We post on there, but we don't own it, right? So NFTs is moving into the era where I can actually own something digital and show the world, hey, like I have this this NFT car, right? It's like this is my style, right? And so it's interesting even thinking about an NFT car. So it's like driving my Jeep over here today, maybe 1,000 people saw me, right? And again, it's like, why do people buy certain brands? Why not buy a Saturn? Why buy a Jeep? It's like some of it is to represent who we are, right? Our identity. Some of it, for some people, is to flex, right? They want to feel good. Like, I've earned money and I want to show the world that I've earned money because that's going to like earn me respect from the world, right? And what's really interesting about that is that happens in the animal kingdom, right? You look at peacocks, you look at like antlers on deer, like that is energy that they're amassing to show their power, right? To actually signal to the opposite sex that I have enough energy to even waste, so I'm powerful, right? Which attracts the opposite sex in the animal kingdom. So as humans, we're doing the same thing with our Mercedes. When you roll up and you have a Rolex, what that signals to a woman is I have economic energy, right? Which can provide safety. And vice versa to a woman with a nice purse, like, I have economic energy. I'm of value to the world. When you meet me, know you're meeting a woman of value. And so even if we don't know, we're signaling these things through the things we buy and the things we own. This is where NFTs is going to explode, because now we can signal to the world who we are. That's why you see Jay-Z with a CryptoPunk on his Twitter profile, because now that's a new flex. That's $1 million profile picture. So, we're starting to move into that direction. So we can start signaling, okay, you're spending time in the metaverse. You don't have a Mercedes, but you have a crypto automobile, right? Or you have a CryptoPunk, or you have a Bored Ape Yacht Club, and that's who you are. That's your identity, and that represents kind of like even your economic energy. So that helps me understand kind of who you are.
It's kind of interesting. You look at things like high-end art, right? And that's been around forever, right? The Mona Lisa has a value that's intangible at this point. It's worth unlimited dollars amount, basically. When realistically, you could have a replica made, right? For less than a 1%, for nothing. You could have a replica made hanging in your house. Now, what's really the difference? The difference is this is the one.
Yeah. So somebody owns.
Right. One, it's
the original.
It's the original.
Yes.
So millions and millions and millions of people will go to Paris to go see it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a tourist thing to see this one thing they've all seen a million times. They just haven't seen the original. So they want to go see that original. Or like Gucci, if they were to make a one of one t-shirt, that value is going to be obnoxious. I can make a one of one t-shirt.
Yes.
It doesn't mean anything,
exactly.
For those types of reasons. So anyways, just to understand, because I want people to understand how it works and why it's trustworthy, because we haven't really touched on that yet. What exactly is blockchain? Like, why is that backed? Because this actually, it counts for both crypto and NFTs, really, for that matter. People are used to, for a house, you have a deed, right? Like you have a physical copy of something. This proves that I own this. As we move with technology digitally, obviously that seems to make less and less sense to have something physical anyways. So we needed to move into some kind of other direction. Can you explain what blockchaining is and why it's kind of the future, why people should trust it?
Yeah, I'll do my best. So I'm semi-technical, but my understanding of blockchain is you have a public ledger, right, which allows a decentralized mining group to essentially authenticate the transactions, right? So when you have a centralized entity authenticating things, then that entity can be corrupted, right? So a government, a company, and blockchain is all about trustlessness, right? So that means how are you going to trust that entity to certify that this happened and not mess with it and not change what happened in their advantage, right, for the company or the government, which is what we've been dealing with throughout history with the money supply, all types of different laws. Like, how can the people stay in power? So Satoshi Nakamoto wrote a white paper about Bitcoin, and this was the invention of the concept of having a decentralized group of people who are miners that are authenticating the blockchain. So think of it as a public ledger, kind of like a Excel spreadsheet that is confirmed by the miners, right? And so the miners get paid for running their computers mixed with electricity. So you take their computing power with electricity and they do complex algorithms that solve problems. Once they solve the problem, that confirms the block, right? And so you can have two people, let's say me and you are completing a transaction. I want to send you Bitcoin. How are we going to trust that I'm sending you the money and that you're going to receive it and it's the actual amount that we agreed on, right? We need a third party to confirm that, right? So it's like you have a Visa, you have banks that are doing that in the traditional world. So now because of these miners, we can have a third party who we don't have to know and is trustless. We don't have to trust them because it's a pool of miners all around the world. And we know that it's not one entity. We know it's not just China. It's not just America. It's not a government controlling it. It's people who are using their own computing and electricity to complete this block. So that's kind of like the revolutionary concept around blockchain, is that you have this trustless group of people who are confirming the actual blocks, which allows us to keep a public ledger, which is an accounting it's an accounting measurement, right? So the world is based on accounting, right? It's like, if I owe you $10, how are we going to make sure that in 10 years, the $10 I owe you is still $10 and it didn't switch to 20, you didn't alleviate that debt. And so we have an actual ledger on the blockchain that everybody can see at all times and can always be verified to see, okay, do our records match up? And so that's kind of the revolutionary idea of blockchain, is that you have a decentralized entity that can actually confirm the transactions that are happening from around the globe.
It just looks like it sounds like a democracy versus having some kind of dictatorship, right?
For sure.
You just have so many people involved that it can't really fail.
It can't. And one, like, you can't kick in the door and shut down a group of computers, because you have computers and miners all over the world, right, who are getting paid to complete these transactions. So they have incentive that they're being paid by the people who are using the platform to confirm the transactions. And which is interesting. It's like, I think this is what makes Bitcoin so amazing and kind of like revolutionary and valuable. So if you think about the cost of mining is consistently going up, because the difficulty of solving these complex algorithms continues to go up, right, as Bitcoin evolves. And so this means that it takes more computing power and it takes more electricity to solve those problems. So what does that do? That means that the Bitcoin miners have to invest in more equipment, which means they have to charge more to complete the transaction, which naturally brings the price of Bitcoin up over the years. So that's why I think it's just such a revolutionary idea. And that's why you see the price performance that you see, because the actual way that it's created is to continue to like make the price actually go up. They said in Bitcoin, price go up, but like it's actually invented for the price to continue to increase.
Yeah. And I think, if you look at it from that standpoint, it should realistically make sense to everybody. You look at like how volatile the different government systems are. Like you can say America is so, solid, but look at how much things have changed in 8 years alone. Think about it from like 2006, before that crash till now, how drastically everything has changed. And then you can say, okay, now I understand why we shouldn't necessarily trust something even as big as the U.S. government and as big as the U.S. dollar to actually be stable or to continue to grow or whatever. And again, when you look at something where it's like, okay, so this is an obvious solution, right? And now as people are starting to buy into it more and more, that's why you saw the Bitcoin boom, is you saw that momentum. Mm-hmm. You had those few people that believed in it. Now a few more people. Now all of a sudden, so many people are believing it. And what's really crazy is we have this significant number of people believing in it, when really that's still a tiny percent of the population, meaning the area for growth here is still like obnoxiously high. Yes. And I think it really does make sense when you put it as like I love how you said before, we live in a digital world, because we really do more than, like a lot of people anyways in first world countries really do live more online than they do in person. You can tell when you go to any bar or anything, you see how many people are sitting on their phones. So obviously like things are things are changing right now, and we got to always, appreciate and recognize how fast things have changed. Social media didn't exist before, not that long ago.
Yeah, we're talking 10 years ago, it was really just getting started.
That's what I'm saying. But now people have full-time careers off it. The entire advertising industry has moved almost exclusively to social media. It's massive how much this has changed, which is a sign of like, okay, things are moving into this digital space. So instead of paying X dollar amount to live in this area of LA to have your apartment be whatever for the people immediately around you to respect and see, it makes more sense then to have things on the online, point where 5 million people can see. So it really does make sense from that standpoint.
Especially now. So things with NFTs are starting to really expand. I think when a lot of people hear about NFTs, they think about art. They hear about like Beepo selling his $69 million everyday piece. But then you have people like Mark Zuckerberg announcing that they're changing Facebook to Meta. And you have this concept of the metaverse that's starting to evolve, right? And that's when things really turn digital. So you have the Quest, right? The Oculus Quest. That is bringing us into a VR world, right? And so through VR and augmented reality, we are going to be living so much more, like Instagram is like a baby step compared to, we're about to dive into the deep pool of living in the digital world. Like in 2 years, we could really easily do this interview in VR where you're in Eau Claire, I'm in LA, and to have the same feeling where I'm seeing your facial expressions, I'm feeling your energy, because unless we're like really this is what we're doing. We're looking at each other. I'm hearing you. I'm seeing you. And so you can see how Zoom popped off during COVID and how that kind of like exploded for people being like, I can actually do a lot of my work here. Traveling less has happened. And I think personally, Zoom is cool. It sucks in comparison to like real life because there's things that we see, right? We communicate non-verbally in so many different ways. And so we are getting ready to like actually step into that world. And so if you think about the metaverse, then you think about, okay, I'm going to have a physical space. Like I'm going to have a room that my homies and we kick it at, right? And I'm playing, maybe we're watching the MMA fights or we're like listening to the new Yeezy album together or something. You see what I'm saying? Like instead of our group chat, we're just like, we're kicking it. Cause like I'm in the group chat with the homies and I communicate every day, right? Like all the time. And so, how are we going to take that into the metaverse? And so NFTs are going to power the metaverse, right? So digital real estate is already booming, and like you can buy digital real estate and put up your own NFTs and people can come in there and spend time in those spaces. And I've been in those spaces and it's like, it's actually a vibe, because you could be on Twitter listening to the audio, but then I'm seeing your avatar and I'm like showing you around and like you're showing me things. So there's already experiences that are happening on like the metaverse side. My daughter's really into Roblox, right? And I sit there and play with my phone next to hers and it's like, we're kind of like in the metaverse together. So we're at this early stage that we're getting ready to really dive into it almost in a way that's like hard to even see, right? I think the best way to think about it is through the movie Ready Player One and seeing how people are earning a living playing games. Like that's already happening right now through Axie Infinity. It's called Play to Earn. And so we're like stepping into this new age of people being able to make more money digitally. Like you were talking about, people making money through Instagram. Like I know plenty of millionaires, that are making money through digital marketing. And it's like, it's crazy, but it's not going to stop, and we're moving into that new realm of, okay, you have influence and you have distribution, but now you have digital ownership. So now if you have a bunch of followers, like, hey, buy my NFT for $1. Like, that's revolutionary right there.
Yeah, they just did that with Tory Lanez, right? I'm sure people end up reading about that. So to finish what we were saying before about like your digital representation stuff, and you're talking about the augmented reality. Realistically, people have been moving to places like New York City forever, right? Because there's so many people there, which means there's so many opportunity there. What we saw with the pandemic was you don't actually physically have to be in these spaces nearly as much as you used to, right? So people are dispersing. All of a sudden now you're having people move to Austin, and in general, people are moving away from these like super, super big cities because the value that they presented isn't so much there anymore.
Yep.
However, because of the internet, people want to be more connected to people more than ever, and it's only going to continue, which means the only way this is going to happen is virtually.
Yep.
Like that is how people are going to see people. And once more and more people are buying into it and are willing to invest into it, which is what's happening already, think about the dollar amounts that are going into Facebook for just advertising purposes alone. It's insane. So clearly things are moving in that way. And if you can actually buy into, because it's real, I mean, look at just how FaceTime became a thing in the last handful of years. If you can buy into the fact that really people are going to be able to be in a room together having a conversation digitally, and that's how a lot of communication is going to start happening, then it starts to make sense why, so wait a second, you can buy clothing for your avatar? Look at things like Call of Duty, how much money people put in there just to have exclusive skins on their guns and stuff, right? That's just that's the very beginning.
And to your point, so the digital ownership has already been here for a large swath of our generation playing games.
Right, exactly. It's there. It's just right now it's been such a niche, small part of people.
And you don't own it. So the game owns that. You
Right.
can't take that skin off of the platform, where now with NFTs, if the games can create those skins as NFTs. And so when you leave the game, you can sell those skins and go into another game. So it's going to be very hard for gamers to even want to be a part of games that aren't letting you have digital ownership in the future.
Yeah, and it's going to evolve, and it's going to evolve fast. You're going to see, Gucci t-shirts for your avatars that are going to, go up and whatever too. So, I mean, that will be going, and that makes a lot of sense for all the reasons that you explained. So
Gucci just dropped a purse already. So they dropped a digital purse that was more expensive than the same purse in real life.
And it really does. It makes sense if you actually believe that this is where things are going, which there isn't a reason why you shouldn't believe that. So NFTs, people tell me to make NFTs all the time. And again, we just talked about how there's that value that's attached to it. So as many of my friends are like, you should make one, you can make $100,000. People aren't paying $100,000 for something that I make. It's just not going to be the case unless I make something that for whatever reason, the people just fall in love with this particular image and then somebody like Jay-Z falls in love with it or something. But whatever. If I want to make one, I just showed you off mic that I make these like little monster things. I paint murals with them, but I do digital. Usually I do digital ones on Procreate first, just so that way I can kind of play around with it before I put a bunch of time into this thing. If I want to make one, can you step me through, like, I have this file already, I already drew it, step me through making it into an NFT. If you were in my position with it, how you would go about creating it and selling it for the first time?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first, you would think about the strategy, right? So your friend saying you should make NFTs, you can sell it for $100,000. It's interesting because it's like, they're not wrong, but they're not, it's not necessarily just like that easy, obviously, but it's less about you can make 100,000 and it's more about who is going to care, right? Because the 100,000 comes from you making the NFT and then people caring. Someone having 100,000 be like, I care enough to buy this, and whoever else has it now has the luxury of owning something that's now valued at what I just bought it for, right? So I would think about the strategy first, even before going into the mint. And the strategy would be around how many pieces do you want to mint? So thinking from there, and then you think about how many collectors do you want to have, right? So if you have 10 pieces, max you can have is 10 collectors, right? If you have 1,000 pieces, you could have up to 1,000 collectors. And so you think about it from that standpoint of, okay, how many collectors do I want to have for my first collection? And then what does it mean to own my NFT? Like, okay, you'll have it in your wallet, you'll have my art, but what else? What is that going to mean anything? So as the creator, you can make that mean a lot of different things. You can do something like you can give them the copyright to that piece that you made, and then they could create derivative art on that piece, right? And they could potentially even monetize that derivative art because they own the copyright. They could monetize a t-shirt from that because they own the copyright, right? And so giving your NFT, powering your NFT with what's called the roadmap. So that's considered a roadmap in the NFT space. So you would want to create a strategy of how many NFTs am I going to create? What do those NFTs look like? Is it one image 1,000 times, right? Creating 1,000 NFTs? Is it 1,000 different images, creating one unique NFT for each one? So kind of getting an understanding first of what you want to do. And then once you have an idea, so let's just make it simple and say you're choosing to mint one image 10 times, right? Just to make it simple. So to walk you through how you would do it. So there's a couple different platforms. I like OpenSea just because it has what's called gasless minting, which isn't technically gasless, but it avoids paying gas fees every time you mint a new piece as a creative. So essentially you pay one time to create a collection, and after you pay that gas fee one time to like enable you to mint, then you can mint, and then the person who buys it actually pays the gas fee for that NFT.
And the gas fee is basically paying the people who do the blockchaining.
The mining to confirm the transaction, which is going to confirm you owning it. So just technically to walk you through, you would go to OpenSea. First, you would need your own crypto wallet, and I suggest a MetaMask wallet, which is like the standard, right? So you would go to metamask.io, you download that onto your Chrome extension, which is an internet browser. So you would have that, and then you also need to fund that wallet, right? So if you have a Coinbase, Kraken account, there's essentially what's called a crypto exchange where you take your money from your bank and you put it into crypto, and then you take it from that wallet and then you send it to your MetaMask wallet, right? So you need to fund your MetaMask with anywhere from like, I would start like $150 at least, because the gas is going to cost it might cost more than that because gas fees do range, but like at a minimum, you want to get some money into your MetaMask. Once you have Ethereum into your MetaMask, then you can log into OpenSea. It's very simple, right? Like you've designed websites, I'm sure, like Squarespace, right? So you would just click, okay, this is the image I want. This is the name of the image. You would put in like, what's the description of the NFT? If you're making 10 of them, there's this, you'd have to just research like, how do I make multiples? Because it's not automatic, but there's a way you can like create 10 of the one NFTs. Then essentially, once everything is written out, you click mint. You would go to your MetaMask wallet. It's going to populate and say you're going to pay for your first time gas fee. It's going to tell you how much. It might be anywhere from $50 up to like literally $300-$400 depending on where the gas fees are for the day. And you pay that one-time fee. Then you'll have your NFTs available, and then you can put them up for sale. So once you mint it, it's not for sale. It's just like you own them essentially. You've like kind of created them. And then you can put them up for sale and choose whatever price you want. So here's where it really gets interesting. And this is like kind of like more deep of the strategy. I think a lot of people who get into NFTs look at it very wrong. And I would look at it, instead of like starting an NFT and trying to charge a bunch of money for it, I would start an NFT and try to get it into the hands of people. And like CryptoPunks, perfect example, they were free, right? So like, let's say your first NFT project was 10 and they were complimentary, but it's like people who have to do something, like listen to your show and take some type of action, fill out a form, and then they give you their Ethereum address, and essentially you airdrop them the NFT. So now you have these 10 people who have this NFT, and the people who own this NFT, you're gonna like call them for a one-on-one 30-minute chat or something, right? So it's like you're kind of activating what this NFT can do. And then you could say, all right, I'm dropping another collection, 100 NFTs. The 10 people who have my first ones, those are the only people who get early access to my mint, right? And those are the people who can buy at this price. Everybody else, you're gonna have to buy at this other price, right? So you could kind of like incentivize people who are your early supporters in other collections you're doing, which actually makes those collectors more valuable. It makes those NFTs more valuable, right? So there's certain things you can consistently do that is in some ways like elevating the value of the NFT. Like the fact that there's a community that has your NFTs, maybe there's like, oh, there's only 10. What if there's 100 people that want it, right? That's simple economic supply and demand, right? So it's like now, 100 people want it, 10 people have it. All right, well, cool, I'm gonna put it up for $100. I got it for free. Oh, boom, someone just bought it for 100. Now you're gonna get a percentage. You gave it away for free, but now that secondary sale, now you're starting to get revenue off of what's happening. Boom, okay, the first person sells it 100. He's like, man, another person's like, I'm gonna sell it. I'm gonna try 500. You know, the 100 people who want it, there's only 10 slots. So one of those hundreds, like 500, I've been looking at it. I want that call, you know? And so now you're seeing the value of this NFT go up based on the community and supply and demand, right? So if you have more supply than demand, you're not going to raise prices, right? Prices aren't going to go high. Like, again, this is just simple economics. So this is like the way I would think about NFTs, because I always tell people, right, what's the best time for you to buy into Bitcoin? At the very beginning, right? So you think about your 10-year NFT journey starting today, right? Where you started with 10 NFTs, but then maybe 10 years from now, maybe who knows how many NFT projects you've had, but those 10 people who got your first NFTs, oh man, they're sitting pretty, right? Just like the people who first got into Bitcoin. And what you're doing is you're rewarding the people who got in early, which is how it should be, right?
Yeah.
That's how it works with stocks. That's how it works with everything, right? Real estate. So I think that's the way to fundamentally think about it, to create value, right? Because just creating NFT itself isn't valuable. It's like, what is that NFT and why do people care? Just like a clothing line or like a skateboard like brand. It's like you see tons of brands probably hitting you up that nobody gives a F about, right? But then you're like, you put a certain brand in your store and people are like, oh, look at, like, I want that. They like save their money for it because that brand has created perceived value.
I'm so glad that you explained it in that way. And I'm going to refer a lot of people to listen to this exact thing that you just said. And not because I'm upset with people, but just so I can explain this. I get advice all the time. I get business advice from people and it's bad all the time. And I'm like, and what sucks is it's coming from a good place. Like it's my friends that want to see me be successful and stuff like, and they do, and I get it. But then I have to have conversation after conversation after conversation about it doesn't work that way. And here is why it doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. And that exactly just explained why I have not made NFTs yet, because I understand with the business that you can't just make it and then expect it to work. You're wasting your time. Yeah. If you want something to work, you have to put in the work. You have to have a launch, not necessarily like I drop this one day, but you have to have a whole plan for how this works. I didn't open the door to my skateboard shop without merchandise in it. I didn't get the lease and open the door and say, well, I got a skateboard shop now, right? It took months.
Yep.
I got the lease, I signed it, I made sure I ordered and got relationships with all these brands so that way I would have, boards and stuff in stock the day that I did open. I had to design everything the way I wanted it. I had to contact the news station so that way people knew about the launch. There's a lot of work that went into it that made it successful. Mm-hmm. And so when people immediately are like, well, why don't you just do this? It's like, well, the people who are successful doing that put a lot of time and energy into it. There was a reason it worked. Exactly. It wasn't a hope and a prayer. So that I'm glad that you put it out there that kind of way, because that's how I view it. And I think anyone who's involved in any kind of entrepreneurship like understands that's kind of how it works. There isn't a get rich quick. If it worked that way, everyone would do it.
Yeah, and I think that as a shop owner, you see the world the way I see it, where it's like it's also about the consumer, right? There's two sides of it. You got the creative on one side doing the creation, but then you got the consumer, right? And it's like, that's how I even got into the space of like caring about the collector, right? So it's like, if you think about the collector, it's like, okay, yeah, you could charge $10,000 for an NFT, but it's like, how does that help your collectors? Imagine if that collector got it for $10 and then it went up to $10,000, right? That's that's a story. That's something where your collector is going to tell their friends about, right? Like buying a $10,000 NFT that they own. It's like, okay, it might be a flex, but it's like, I think that if you think about it from both sides, not just like, oh, I'm a creative and I got awesome stuff, I'm so awesome, I'm gonna like change the game with my NFT, but you're like, no, all right, I got awesome stuff, but then there's awesome collectors out there, there's awesome fans, and I'm gonna serve them. And I think the people who do, it works the same way in digital marketing, social media. Like the YouTubers who give value nonstop are the ones who are making millions of dollars a year, right? They weren't just like, oh, I'm a creative and I'm just like like they're just constantly giving to their community, right? So I think the people who are going to be successful in NFTs are going to do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's who decides what the price is, right? That's how that's bad. And there's a reason why people then give out, like me, the amount of stickers I have made and just given to people is tens of thousands at this point, right? And I'd never charged anyone for the ones that are like my logo. It's simply because I want to see them be stoked on it and put it out there. Now people recognize it. Now that there's name recognition, all of a sudden there's a value that's attached to it. So you have to look at it from all those avenues. All right, you cleared up a lot for me, so I'm really stoked on that. There's a few things I still want to ask, though. One, moving forward now, I know you're still DJing, and I know we didn't even get into a lot of what you've done with your life. How do you kind of expect your time to be used moving forward? Because you're doing a lot of things and you're going to continue to do more than one thing. But in general, like how do you kind of see your time moving forward?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So right now I'm focused on the business side and managing the projects that I'm managing, but I'm also very deep in the creative process of my art, right? So I have some commission pieces that I'm still working on. I have a mixtape / album that's being mixed and mastered by the world famous Abbey Road right now. And that's a second follow-up mixtape to my first initial mixtape, The Mountaintop, with a partner of mine, Thoughtwork, where we create music together. So I've been working on that for the past year. And then I have some events that have been culminating as a DJ. You know, one of the things as a DJ that I do is not just play music, but like cultivate events, right? And create experiences. So COVID really threw a wrench in the whole entertainment industry, live music DJing. So I've been getting back into it. I've been DJing events in the metaverse, you know, in some of my digital real estate plots. So I do have an integration of an NFT project that is a music-focused NFT project that's going to be integrating NFTs, live shows, and the metaverse. So it's like 80% is really focused on managing my clients and my businesses, and then I'm spending a decent amount of time just like cultivating the creativity inside of me. And a lot of it is also building capital to be able to create all of the creative projects in the way I want, right? Like Kanye West always talks about how he loses money doing music because he creates these really elaborate stages and shows. And I think being a creative, it's like we have these ideas of what we want to do. Like you having the idea for your store, but then you have to create the merchandising. You have to like create the store. It takes that capital. It's not just like, oh, I get a couple skateboards and open up shop, right? You have to piece it all together. So I've really been focused a lot on my business in the last couple of years because of the way I want to present myself as an artist, as a DJ, touring, and then having my own events that are meaningful and that people enjoy coming to. You know, that's something that I've been doing for the past 10 years here in LA, is creating these like multifaceted events, you know, where it's music, it's digital entertainment marketing, influencers, it's food, right? It's cannabis. It's like people coming together in a way that they remember, you know, and it's like, because all these things like music, you know, it's like, okay, we listen to music, but a lot of music we listen to is like with people, right? And as a DJ, like when things turned digital because of COVID, it was really hard for me. And that's what actually got me into NFTs, because I love playing music as a DJ and then feeling the audience. You know, it's like when I'm playing for the response. You know, I'm watching every movement, how everyone's moving. Like, did they like that genre? This crowd, right? Every crowd's different. Okay, boom. I see them moving, getting hyped, like we're riding, we're literally having a conversation. You know, I'm not just like playing to them. I personally, the way I DJ is I'm having a conversation. And so playing in the digital sense, you lose that, right? Like DJing to a camera and people are watching, it's just something that's really lost. And so I think that as we come back to reality through the pandemic, I think that we're really we're wanting experiences, right? And I think that at the same time, we're living in this very modern time, you know, cannabis legalization, just the way people even work, gig economies. You're seeing a lot of like young people stepping into more wealth, right? Having spaces, having the ability to create these type of events. Festivals are happening in a very modern way. So I'm like super bullish and passionate about like the experiential part of life and how I can be a part of that as a DJ, as an event planner, and as just like someone who can help other people talk about their events that are dope, like lightning in a bottle, you know, I think is just like such a dope experience. And I think it's one of the most innovative businesses in the last 10 years to me is like some of these events, you know, it's like, yeah, digital world's cool and I'm all for it, but there's nothing beats like seeing an artist with a crazy performance or like crazy artwork, you know what I mean? Like what they're doing at Burning Man, I think is really revolutionary as far as like us rethinking about how do we live? You know, how do we engage with each other? Like when I meet someone new, like, what do I do? You know, it's like, and these festivals actually can teach you like a new way of being. So that's why I say it's like a new technology. So that's where I'm spending a lot of my time is trying to balance like the business side and creative side, but doing it in a way that can continue to evolve as I see our world is evolving really fast as far as just our culture.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at things like you were saying, Kanye West putting more money into something. Like before that, Michael Jackson was putting more money into his music videos than he ever made. And that's all kind of building everything for the experience and why people appreciate these people. But if you look at like the way that technology and things are evolving, it's not then just in the digital realm. That's also look at how all of a sudden now people are using holograms all the time, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like all these tools are there for us to continue to evolve what the experience can look like, whether it's in the physical world or the digital world. And as more people are spending time in the digital world, their expectations change for what the physical world should look like. So being at the forefront and saying, okay, well, this gives me a lot of opportunity to provide something completely new to people that they've never experienced. Mm-hmm. You know, all of a sudden we can talk about having a digital space where people are going to an art show with NFTs with a DJ playing, mm-hmm. right? Like these types of things are brand new, so they're going to evolve really quickly. And even if they're not being done like as good as you want them to be, they're new to people, and that alone brings a lot of value because it's an experience they haven't had.
Exactly.
Okay, so talking about experiences, when you do things that you're passionate about for a living, money's not typically like what really drives you or like what excites you, because really money's just a tool to get you somewhere, you know, whether it's to take a vacation to Hawaii and whatever it is, it's just a tool. But when you do things you care about for a living, you're filled by different kinds of experiences, and you tend to have quite a few of them throughout the time. Can you share a story of an experience that you got to have that you're really grateful for, but it only happened because you chose this path?
Yeah. Oh, man. So it's a story of how I met my late friend Chimo Du, who recently passed away this year. 'Cause he was such a profound part of my life and still continues to be such a profound part of my life as a mentor and someone who guided me. But when I was probably 22, 23, I had a t-shirt line, which is like how I first got into creating my store. And I had this idea in my head. I was like, you know, I think my line is hot. I think this brand is dope. And I want to like prove it to myself because I'm kind of selling it I was selling it in Wisconsin at Stout. I was selling it to my friends in Minnesota. So I'm like, man, I think it's hot. But this was like really almost before the internet was really bubbling. And I was just like, man, I need to prove it to myself. So I went out to New York. I like planned a trip to go to New York. And my whole idea was like, I'm going to sell my shirts on the streets of New York. And if I can sell them on the streets of New York, like these are hot, you know, and it was just like this thing I had in my head. So I went out to New York, had my shirts, had the bag. I'm like downtown and like, I'm selling them like they're popping. People are like messing with them, you know what I mean? They're like, oh man, these are cool. Like, yo, so I'm like, oh, I'm feeling good. I got some money in my pocket. You know, it feels really good to like sell things hand to hand. You like sell a t-shirt, you got $20, you sell like you got $80. You're like, oh man, like, okay. So I was out in New York and I'm like, all right, I'm downtown. I was like, let me go to Canal. Like I hear a lot about Canal. I think it was like one of my first time, maybe my second time in New York. I think it was my second time. So I was like, all right, you know, people sell things on Canal. So I go to Canal Street. I'm trying to sell my shirts. And I'm just like, man, like, it wasn't working. People are looking at me like, what are you doing here? Like, why are you trying to sell me a shirt on the street? It was just like way different energy than I was getting downtown. I was getting mad love there. I'm just like, everyone's like, nah, get out my way. And I'm like sweating. I just remember thinking to myself like, man, this is terrible. This is a bad idea. Like, why'd you come out here to New York? Like, I'm like just bringing all this like, why did you do this? So I'm like, man, I got to get out of here. And so I kind of like I leave off a Canal and like I get off the street and I see this kind of like this bar with the windows open, all these like tropical plants coming out. It looked like an oasis because Canal's like, I don't know if you've ever been out there, but it's like Chinatown is just like really, you know, utilitarian and rugged and steel and just mad people. And so I was like, man, it's an oasis. So I like step up and I just turned, matter of fact, I was 21 because I remember I just turned 21. So I was able to go into bars and kind of like, you know, it's like a thing. Like I can get away from the street and go into a bar and just chill, which is kind of like actually nice. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I go up to the bar and I remember this dude sitting there, long dreads. Right when I walk in, he's like, oh, it's a nice shirt you have on. And I had one of my Tupac shirts that I designed. And I'm like, oh, thanks, man. I was like, I designed it. And I sat down next to him. And he looks at me. He's like, oh, that's what's up. He's like, I knew Tupac. And I'm like, oh, man, here we go. Like some dude. I was like, I'm already having a bad day. Now this dude's about to start lying about knowing Tupac. But then part of me was just like, you know, I'm in New York. Like, I guess it's possible. Like, it's New York. You know what I mean? Right. It's not like whatever. So I'm like, and he's like, no, he was just like, have you ever heard of the Source magazine? I'm like, you kidding me? Like I had all Source magazine photos just literally surrounding my walls growing up. He was like, oh yeah. He was like, I was the head photo editor of the Source magazine for the first 13 years. I was like, what? I'm like, yo. And so he's telling me, I'm like, yo, you did know Pop. He's like, man, I was friends with Pop. Like we used to kick it. He was just like, man, I would hang out with Pac and he like pull out his gun and be like, she don't give a F, like busting the wall. And I was just like, man. So we kind of became friends. And then that trip, he showed me like some t-shirts he had, some posters he had. And so I ended up doing business with him and kind of like taking some of his stuff back to my store, selling it. But that experience of meeting Chi Modu really changed my life because in many ways, like just the way he thinks as a strategist, being a black man, especially in the hip hop space, like he was like, you know, back in the 2000s, it still was like, it wasn't as cool as it is now to be hip hop. You know, all the people are like selling things using slang, but back then it was like still looked like it was like a mark against you. Like if you looked a certain way, it was like, oh, you're a thug. So I really looked at him because I always was just like, man, I love hip hop. It was just a culture for me. So I didn't really even fully digest how like people were looking at me and being like, oh, you're a thug because I'm wearing a certain type of clothes. You know, I was just like, this is what I love, this is who I am. But like he was able to point me in directions and really guide me in ways that I think nobody else at the time could have, you know, because he was successful and just what he was doing. He was also a family man. So, you know, that experience really changed my life. And then that brings me to where I am today. I helped Chi get into the NFT space. His family has made over $400,000 from that move that he made just like, you know, 2 months before him passing away. So like his family is now essentially potentially taken care of for the rest of their life because he got into NFTs, at the right time and was able to like do right by the NFTs, and like the way he minted them at the right price, and just
Right.
It just all made sense. And so now, I've learned so much from him, and I'm meeting people who are connected with Chi that I'm working with, and like I get to have those relationships with them based on the man he was, because he just the way he moved, it garnered so much respect,
Right.
And so when I'm connecting with people, I'm like, they tell me about their relationship, and I'm still learning from, that literally that trip out there.
Yeah, I think people would be surprised how often a lot of times they're like, man, you just got so lucky in this situation. And, I like to think of like karma as statistics, where it's like, good karma, especially like where I live, a smaller town, you see the same people all the time. Mm-hmm. Statistically speaking, you're gonna run into that person again. So it's not even a matter of like this whatever magical thing. It just is gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's a matter of time. So honestly, I tell people this all the time. If you are very honest and genuine and hardworking towards whatever it is you're trying to do, and you're willing to like be humble enough to make it known that you need help and you're working on these things, you would be surprised by the number of people you'll like meet that will help you.
Oh yeah.
Because people want that. They want to be a part of that journey. They see you moving and they want to help you get there. We're talking about, people introducing people, right? Like I met this photographer, Max Menaker, aka Visual Dirt on Instagram. He saw something with my show that he's like, this would be cool. So then he introduced me to a bunch of people. One of them being J-Rap, who is one of my favorite guests I've ever had on the show. He was awesome. I hung out with him a couple nights ago. And then because of J-Rap, now I met you, all it came from was me trying to do this thing and putting it out there and making it known I'm trying to do this thing. Mm-hmm. Now, without Max being the catalyst for that particular relationship, now maybe things could have taken a little bit longer, but if it wasn't him, it was going to be somebody else, right? Yep. Because the same way I met this guy, Wayne Hoffman, he's one of the bigger illusionists in the world when I was in Florida, kind of randomly. He introduced me to a bunch of people that I've now interviewed out here in LA too. So it's like, if people just have that attitude of just be positive and try to just make it known what you're doing and just keep working on it, it will happen.
Yeah.
People will recognize it and they will help you.
And like you said, people want to help people doing something, you know? So like it's the doing something that we all want to support. It's like, oh man, they're doing something. If they don't know this piece, if they just knew this piece, and they'll be more on their way, because, we've all been there, we've all struggled, people doing anything. So we do want to help the next man or woman next to us be like, oh man, they could avoid some of the stuff I avoided.
Yep.
Here I hit,
But it's only when you see them actually trying, not saying they want something,
exactly,
but actually putting in that work. That's when you want to see it. When you see that hustle, you're like, okay, now I want to help you, right?
Because it's like, it's kin, it's like, oh.
Exactly. Okay, so one more thing I wanted to ask. I always ask people to share a story about a mistake, because I think that's the easiest way that we learn. And we obviously, honestly, to get to any point of success at all, you would have had to have made a bunch of mistakes. Mm-hmm. That's the only reason you're good at what you do at this point, right? Mm-hmm. So can you share a story about a mistake that you made that taught you something valuable that somebody listening might be able to benefit from?
Yeah, I was thinking about this when you asked. I think a lesson that I learned was not thinking about the future as much when I was younger, like in my 20s. Like I was making six figures when I was 23 with my store, and I would take a lot of that money and like go to the club, buy bottles. I would pay for my friends to travel with me because I didn't want to travel alone. Like when I think about it, like thousands, tens, and potentially hundreds of thousands, like went into no investment account. It's just like, I wasn't thinking like that at the time. I was just young, making money, and happy to be like living that lifestyle. I don't think it was like wrong, but I do know that like the lesson that I would like to share with people is just like invest some of that money. That's why I think today we're in such a different age, right? You got things like Robinhood, you have cryptocurrency, and like people are talking about investing like it's cool and it's normal. Where like back in 2006, that just wasn't on my radar. I'm sure it was people doing that. But I would say for people when you're younger to realize that like, yeah, you're having fun and you have energy, but like build for the future. especially if things are going well. If things are going well and you're young, really like meet some people who know how to invest, because you're going to be young. It's probably not going to just come natural to you, but like find older people who are investing in things and ask them a ton of questions. Don't just trust one person and be like, oh, this is the investment guru. Like actually learn about that, because these are skills you're going to want to have for your whole life, and if you have the money, you could actually start learning. Like I could have like went into that instead of just like, my view was just like, I'm just going to keep investing in my business as an entrepreneur, right? Buying more merchandise and all of that. And I think that's part of the lesson and mistake. It's like, yes, believe in your business, but also create something that no matter what happens to your business, you're continuing to grow. Like you have assets that are continuing to grow, that don't need you, right? Because your business, essentially, as an entrepreneur, at least, it needs you. And if you're not there, it's not going to function.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's two parts to that, right? It's the idea of like, you have to be looking in a certain distance to get there, right? So if you're just walking, right, and you never put your head up, you're only looking at your feet, you can avoid puddles, you can avoid cracks. You're not going to trip over your feet. That's fine. But if you're not actually looking at that mountain off in the distance, you're not going to get any closer to it, which in the short term doesn't seem to matter to you. But in the long term, you do want to get there. So it is important to always be looking in that direction, or at the very least look up every once in a while, make sure you're still heading in that direction, right? Yeah. And then when it comes to investing your business, yes, I do agree that is really important. And I think that's the quickest way to flip money a lot of times, especially in like a retail space like mine. But I really suggest people really just to think of it more simply as investing in yourself as a whole. Right. And that could be is in some kind of portfolio with like NFTs and crypto. It could be into stock markets. It could be into real estate, but investing in yourself. Right. So that could also mean education.
Yes.
That could also mean, equipment that I need for this. That could also mean relationships, investing into that kind of realm. As long as you're investing in a way that is helping you on your path to where you want to be long term, there's a lot of ways to be doing that.
Yep.
Buying bottle service and paying for your friends to travel is probably not the best way to invest in yourself.
Exactly.
Right? But there are a lot of ways to do it.
And I love that point about investing in yourself, because what I would say to my younger self is to think about things in buckets, right? Because it's like not all investments are the same, right? So it's like investing in yourself, that's like a bucket, right? Schooling, you could even say going out to like there's certain things like how you look, like your haircut, those are investments in yourself, right? Then you have low risk, medium, and high risk investments. And like to think about those things, right? If you're younger, you can take more risk with your money. So you can put some of your assets in a high risk asset, right? Where it's like, well, I may lose, but if I win big. I'm young, I have some money to potentially even lose. And then you put some of that in a medium risk bucket where it's like, all right, that might be like your own business, right? It might be something that's a little bit more, you have a friend and they have a t-shirt line. You're like, all right, like that has like, it's not going to just lose a bunch of money right away. But then you have things that are like low risk, right? So it's like, even when you're in your 20s or whatever, just thinking about like, even if it's a little bit of money in something low risk, some money in a medium and then some money in a high, I just think that like, even if it was 10% of whatever you're making split in those buckets, it's just like, it's such a better way than just like, well, I'll do that later. It's like, that's why I think the younger mentality is just like, that's stocks, bonds, blah, 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 like, I'll do that later. But in like, even crypto, like I've literally had to tell friends in their 20s to like get into crypto and they're like, I'll do it later. I'm like, bro, you don't have $100. And I look at them dead in their face, like, you don't have $100? And they're like, oh yeah. And the friends that have done that, they literally have like thousands, tens of thousands of dollars today that they didn't even think that they could have, because like just starting with that $100, into Ethereum, which then turns into 300, and then that gets people thinking. You see what I'm saying? So that's what I would really tell anybody is just like, think about your investments in those buckets.
Yes. And one more thing I do want to say is people need to invest in themselves to a point to even have that 100. One big problem in America is I don't think we respect the fact that a lot of people really don't have $100. They really don't. Mm-hmm. They cannot afford to throw that away. They have to buy shoes for their kids, or they have to buy whatever. So to get to that point, you have to invest in yourself so that way you can even have those tools to start to like invest and do different things. And if you're not at a place where you can even have a couple $100 aside every month, you got to sit down and focus, okay, how can I get to that place?
Yep.
You know, my dad always said that money doesn't, buy happiness, but being poor sucks, right? You need to be at a place where you can at least live comfortably, even if that just means eating ramen and living in an apartment or whatever. You have to be able to get to that place. So you got to invest into those spaces. So how can people moving forward now, once again, how can they go see your stuff, whether it's your music, your artwork? How can they get in contact with you? And in general, how can they support the things you're trying to do moving forward?
Yeah, hit me up on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Enrico Moses. That's like the best way. Everything that's happening is current. I have a link tree on there that has all my links with my music and my mixes as a DJ. I have the links for my NFT drops that are coming out. But hit me up. This is a global community. You know what I mean? I love just communicating with new people that are doing dope things, or people that want to learn, So yeah, hit me up, reach out, and I'm always down to connect and build with folks.
Yeah, I mean, helping them helps you, helps everyone around them, and that's the cool part. It's like that ripple effect, right? You can help one person, which turns into helping 10, which turns into 100,000, tens of thousands. So
for sure.
Yeah, that's the place to start.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Passion Pod. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We'll see you soon.